Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for a special week as we cover Wolverine's newest EP, A Darkened Sun. But before we get there, Chris, man, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Long week. Glad that it's over. Shorter week coming up, and then we'll get to hang out with each other for the first time in a while. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I definitely am. It'll be nice, and it'll be it's well deserved if I do say so myself. It's been a long time coming, but I'm excited. Have you listened to anything good this week? I have a couple of things in mind that I heard that just kind of blew me away, but I want to let you kind of talk about some stuff first.
Yeah, so I posted a new playlist to our Spotify playlist page, but I can't remember if I actually posted about it on our social media. If not, I will post it this week. But there's a couple of things that are on there that I wanted to mention. I had mentioned the Legend of Valley Doom Part 3 album last week, and at the time I had only had a chance to listen to it the one time, but I've listened to it a bunch more times, and it's really great stuff. The cast, I'm not going to go through the names again, but arguably one of my favorite vocal casts ever put together on an album. Just some of my favorite singers. The songwriting is really strong. I think it's the best of Marius Danielson's 3 albums that he's put out so far. So I have really been enjoying that. And I can't remember if I mentioned it last week that if I did, I apologize. Mention it again because it's worth mentioning again. Palake and Charlotte Wessels, formerly of Delane, did a song together called Into Fury, which I think is really, really well done. And again, that's on the playlist as well as The Stranger, who you mentioned a couple weeks ago, and a band Evermore that you told me about. They have an album called Court of the Tyrant King. Really cool song, Northern Cross. So definitely recommend checking out some of those songs. And I had several people reach out to me to say how much they really got like Dark Horse, White Horse. Nick and Knops both. And then I spoke with my friend Caleb last night, and he said he really enjoyed it as well. So I'm wondering if they really got something going here. I mean, it's only a 4-song EP, but a lot of momentum, it seems, just from some of our personal friends really enjoying that EP.
Yeah, it kind of went under the radar when it was released, in that it didn't seem to get the fanfare that I think it might have otherwise deserved. But it's one of the best things I've heard in a long, long time. So I'm definitely with you there. And just to echo the sentiments about Legend of Valley Doom, I think it is the best of the 3 by far. I actually went back and listened to the first 2 just to kind of refresh my own recollection, and I think it is the strongest. It also is the best, has the best production of the 3, which is not terribly surprising. So I have to echo your sentiments there. I just wanted to mention a couple of things myself. A couple of months ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I had mentioned the Silver Lake project by Esa Halapainen from Amorphis. They released another single, Ray of Light, but it features Einar Solberg from Leprous on vocals, and that song is fantastic. When you mix Leprous and Amorphis, you make me very happy, so definitely something to check out and something that I'll be posting during the week. Another project, which is in a completely different vein, there's a band from, it's really, I guess, a super group. It features Daniel Tompkins of Tesseract, the guitarist from Sky Harbor, and a couple of other instrumentalists or a couple of other musicians. It's called White Moth Black Butterfly, and it's really like, I guess you'd call it like progressive pop music. It's really radio friendly, and something that like I can almost hear when you put on pop radio here in New York City. This group has a chance to do something exceptionally special. They had released a single from, I guess, their upcoming release. It's called Soma. It's a short song, but it is phenomenal. And it's something that I think a lot of people will get into, not just fans of progressive music or rock music, but really it's something that anybody could listen to. And I'm curious to get people's thoughts on that when I post something. Have you ever heard of them, or is this a new band for you as well?
No, this is my first time hearing about it.
Yeah, it's. I think you'll enjoy it. It's definitely a change of pace. So I'm going to post that as well. Again, that's White Moth Black Butterfly. They have 2 other albums, I believe, that had come out one was called 1,000 Wings and the other was called Atone, both from a number of years ago. But their new release, I believe it comes out at the end of this month. I think it's going to be called The Cost of Dreaming. So it's something I'm definitely looking forward to. And the last bit of nostalgia for me was a band called Frost. It was a progressive rock band from the UK. They just released their new album, and I was really impressed. I thought it was one of their better efforts. It was called Day and Age, and I know that some of our listeners are big prog guys. Definitely check out the new Frost album, Day and Age. Very, very good stuff. Well done. And quite frankly, when a band has been on hiatus for a while, sometimes I get a little scared as to what's going to come out. But I thought that they didn't miss a beat at all. It was a really good album.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that. I was a fan of some of their earlier albums. I remember just randomly hearing them and just being like, "Oh, this is my kind of prog music," which is, prog is always kind of hit or miss for me in a lot of ways. So, but Frost was always, I think that kind of they have kind of that melodic sound to them that makes it a little bit more like, tap your foot, catchy kind of like prog music that I definitely am a fan of. So I look forward to hearing that.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely enjoy it. And, unfortunately, I know that you couldn't join our conversation with Wolverine as we talked about at Darkened Sun, but I did have the opportunity to sit down and really go into kind of detail about the new EP and some of the other stuff that they're working on. And that was with Marcus and Thomas from the band who, we were fortunate enough to see at ProgPower a number of years ago, which was a very memorable experience for me. I can tell you that. So it was nice to sit down with them. But like I said, unfortunately, I think we'll go back to the normal format next week where we debate our next album. But before we talk about next week, let us play for you our piece with Wolverine, which I think you'll all enjoy. Welcome back. It's Justin here with Marcus and Thomas from Wolverine. Thank you guys for joining me. How are you both?
Well, how are you, Marcus?
I'm good here in the bubble, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy time. Obviously, I am so happy that you could join me today, and I think the fans of the show are really going to enjoy us kind of doing a deep dive into your newest release. So again, thank you so much for jumping on with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. I know that at Darkened Sun, your most recent EP was digitally released just a couple of days ago on May 14th. But the world really first got to hear it on October 31st of last year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this idea came about and really what inspired this wonderful piece of music tied to this rather detailed video and visual production?
Should you start, Thomas?
No, I think you should start, Marcus, because
Okay.
you're the one who came up with the original ideas for the songs, actually.
Yeah. My view of it was that we wanted to make an EP. That was our, first intent, and then we demoed some songs, and after a while, I think Thomas came with the idea that we should make a film out of it.
So it was really the music that kind of dictated where the project went?
Yeah, I guess it always is. Music always comes first when we're writing, at least. First music, then lyrics, and then the rest.
It kind of falls into place from there, I suppose.
Yeah.
And Thomas, I guess to that end, you had these ideas for these 4 beautiful songs. What inspired you to put this rather powerful movie behind it?
Well, I don't know. Well, first of all, I think, like Marcus says, it was about just the idea of doing something special, like beyond audio only in quotation marks, to sort of offer a new dimension, if you will, to the whole thing. So and when Marcus at an early stage played a couple of well, should we call it like skeletons of
like demos or
yeah,
early versions?
Yeah, that he'd put together. This idea of a dystopian world or story unfolding in dystopia sort of took hold in my head, and then that sort of evolved into what you see in A Darkened Sun. Not a dystopian story in that sense, depending on if you perceive our society as being a tad bit dystopian.
Sure.
But no, I think the idea came from let's see, where we ended up with this whole thing. I said I was going to write the lyrics, and that took a lot of time because the lyric had to sort of conduct how the story was supposed to unfold in the film. And it was supposed to be sort of a concept album or concept EP, but not in a linear sense. The film is linear in a way.
Sure.
But the lyrics themselves are sort of 4 different perspectives of like a mutual or a common core sort of.
Right. Right.
And they can be interpreted in several ways. But of course, when you watch the film, that's only one interpretation of the songs.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because as I've watched this countless times at this point, I noticed that every time I watched it, I would wind up pausing the video and kind of gathering myself, if you will, just because I wanted to make sure that my interpretation of what I was seeing was correct. Can you get into a little bit about what I guess your ultimate vision was, or did you have multiple visions and that's what the piece came to be?
I think I had a vision of well, pretty much what you see unfold in the film. Like at the core, there is this sense of being on the hunt for something that is empty, pretty much. And of course, that's a philosophical, societal, and maybe political thing. But I also wanted, well, it doesn't matter. When you write the lyrics, of course, people will interpret. People will probably find religion in it, although I don't have those intentions. And people can find all sorts of things that sort of map on to their own lives. But my idea in interpreting it through the visuals is the chase for the emptiness and how it sort of consumes us. And although it's a sort of a linear story in the film, it's still 4 different perspectives on how the protagonist or the eye, or depending on how you see things, sort of relates and what he or she tries to make of it, and perhaps how he or she tries to make a way out of it. You know, the sort of the vice, if you will.
Sure, and I think that resonates at least with me as the listener, because these were a number of the bigger thematic issues that I noticed as I'm listening to this. And for obviously fans of the band, you maintain your core sound throughout the entire thing. So when you listen to this, you know it's a Wolverine EP. But and I say this with love, you know, I listened to your old albums and I almost felt like something was, I don't want to say missing, but I thought that the video really made the music pop on this for me in ways that maybe some of the other albums, although I love them, you're left to a little bit more of your own interpretation when you read the lyrics on a Communication Loss or a Machina Viva. But with here, you know, you're seeing the lyrics, and then at the same time you're watching something happen at the same time, and I thought it was just extremely creative. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah.
When if I'm just going back to, I guess, the beginning for 1 second, when did this idea for this EP come to you, Marcus? Was this something that you had been thinking about for a while? I know it had been about 5 years since the last album.
Well, in today's musical climate, you know, with all the physical media going away and, you know, a lot of streaming and videos, and there's a lot of it. There's a lot of music, and there's a lot of bands, and everybody has a voice nowadays. So the film thing was a good idea, I thought, because it makes maybe us poke out a bit from the noise, a bit. So that was one aspect of the film idea that I liked, and I've always liked the EP format for some reason, because it's a small album. It's not a full album, but it's a small album that you can sort of experiment with a bit. You have a small format thing that you can try things in.
Yeah, and to that, a couple of things. Number one, I think that if this had been a full album set to video, it may have almost been too much to digest, just because never mind the work that goes into it, but it's just so much there that I thought it's perfect for the length that it is. But if you go too much deeper into it, I could see the fan in me just saying to myself, it's almost too much. So I thought that was very interesting. And second of all, it seems like a lot of bands, when they release their albums, a week before or a month before, they're releasing videos, but it's not the kind of video that you did with the Darkened Sun. It was, they're basically just, you'll see a band playing live, or you'll see, lyrics on the screen. This was a lot more introspective than that. And I think that resonates from the second that it starts.
Yeah, I think. The idea, are you thinking about the like the snippets of previews with the strange sounds, like previous to the actual trailers or release?
Yeah, and even with other bands, they'll release an entire song of the album, and they'll put up the lyrics, and it's a great intro into what you're about to see. But with you guys, when I first watched this on October 31st of last year, I sat there for 28 minutes, and I was, you could tell this was a different music video than what everybody else was doing. It was really very unique in that way. And I think that, at least I can say for myself, it resonated with me, and I'm sure it does with other listeners, as well. So, at some point, I want to touch a little bit upon just the music industry in general, and the success that you've had with it, and where you kind of see it going in the future. But before we do that, let's just do a little bit of a deep dive into each of the four parts, if you will, of the video, because I know that you've done a lot of other interviews and whatnot, but I just wanted to talk at least a little bit about each of the four parts and some of the stuff that resonated.
Sure.
When you jump into a Phoenix Lane, one of the things that jumped out to me is you have this girl, she's looking at her phone, and one of the things that you see on social media is the look at me, look at me, look at me. And I thought that was an extremely powerful image. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was about, and what the idea for that piece was? Because it sets the tone for the entire release. Yeah,
I think Phoenix Lane on the whole is if we dive into the idea of what it represents in the story on the whole, it's sort of we get to meet this individual who is in some sort of distress, and we can see some, we get some clues as to what this might be. She's looking back at better days, basically, but also like you mentioned with the cell phone. It's I thought I sort of wanted to push the media, social media, or the digitized, the digital world that we sort of perhaps spend most of our lives, unless we're hopefully sleeping. It becomes a sort of a sleep in itself to sort of spend your hours in something that is sort of, it's virtual in that respect. And to me, it was important to show that, but also to show that with the cell phone, perhaps it felt a bit obvious, and sort of you want to portray this poor individual who's sort of stuck in the motions of I don't know, mainstream or whatever, mainstream life, or the chase for status or whatever that might be. It becomes perhaps a bit too obvious, but at the same time, it's also a huge part of our reality in the Western world. So that was what I wanted to show, that this unhappy individual is sort of stuck to the screens, also with the TV in that respect. And I try to use those elements as a symbolic means of sort of showing something perhaps deeper than just a flat screen, if you will.
And I think that resonates. It resonated with me with the whole hate book reference and everything. I thought that.
Oh, you noticed that?
I did. It was creative, but it made me smile, and I could see obviously where we were going with this. But I think it's a commentary that's definitely worth bringing to light. I mean, there were so many things like that throughout the entire piece.
Yeah,
I won't mention them all. I'll leave the spoilers for people when they watch it on their own. But I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up one of my favorite lines in the entire piece. It's the girl is walking down the street and it says, "I'm a void of stolen dreams, skies I'll never reach." And I don't know if this was intentional, but on the left-hand side, you see the Rolex store, which I thought was very poetic. And I don't know if that was intentional or if it was something that was just kind of a function of the way it was filmed, but it resonated with me.
I think it's both. For better or worse, the Rolex store is there. And of course, Rolex is one of our status symbols or whatever in society, like that, expensive watches. And of course, in the on the screen, you see something on the screen as well on the left-hand side. But still, I needed a street to sort of where I could film Rebecca, our protagonist. But of course, it doesn't really matter. It's also a matter of seeing these storefronts with the Rolex. Of course, they might not symbolize the same kind of status as an expensive watch, but it's all about it's about fashion and stuff like that as well. Of course. So the storefronts, of course, could be said to symbolize, the perhaps windows that we sort of that we look through these storefronts, and they become some sort of mirror to ourselves. In here's what I could be, if I had this item, and so on and so forth. So it's like you look into magic mirrors through. Storefronts, if you follow that sort of line of symbolics and like metaphor, if you will.
No, yeah. I think that again resonates. Let's go to the breach, which is obviously kind of act 2 of this this narrative, if you will. When Marcus, when you were kind of coming up with the skeleton, as we call it, for the ideas for this. Me personally, I heard a bit of a Fates Warning vibe with the breach, like that American progressive metal band. Am I hearing things, or was that one of your bigger influences when you were writing?
No, not really. I just had this riff that I just I was fooling around with the guitar,
right?
And I just made a song out of that, and made something that flowed quite good, I thought. And
it was very catchy, and that riff really appears throughout the entire section of the song, but it's extremely catchy, which as a listener, it's just something that you can kind of gravitate towards. So I found it a very easy listen in that sense, because I think it's a fantastic riff that you built the piece around.
Yeah, and it's like a machine. It functions as a machine throughout the whole song. It's something
like that just machine.
Yeah, it's something that goes on and on.
Yeah. I mean, and it really, for the entire piece, I think it was for the entire part of the song. It was definitely reoccurring, if you will. Can you talk a little bit, I guess, about that? I guess you call it a clandestine operation with the investigator. What was the point behind that part of the film. It was interesting to me because it was a little bit different than the rest.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I wrote one of the earliest sort of ideas that I had for the visual part of this story was that I saw this like private detective running around looking for clues, beating people up, and so on. And this became sort of the part in the story where the protagonist is on a hunt for sort of, well, be it the truth or clues to a more like a happier past or whatever. So in that respect, we have this chase as in these alleys and so on as a symbolic for well, maybe trying to get to a point where you get to know yourself again and so on. And with the clandestine operation, of course, you have to sort of go undercover or under the radar to do this. You have to sort of untangle from the perhaps the forces that pull on you all the time, that demand your attention. They say things about what to be and not to be, and so on. So in that respect, you have to sort of well, you have to go into stealth mode and sort of shut the noise off and go on your hunt.
And it was interesting because the way that the scene ends is you have your main character basically destroying this small room, the one with the wheel outside, and then she goes off running, and it's kind of like a poetic way to end the first two acts of the movie.
Yeah, well, it's like our protagonist follows the leads to get to the source, obviously. But discover that she's not getting anywhere. She's still stuck in this place, which sort of induces this anger, this frustration, and so on that you see.
Which obviously is like the perfect segue into Act 3, the Dead is the Moon, where she's basically just a puppet or a marionette on strings, because she's, it's symbolic of being controlled by these outside forces and really having no say in it herself, right? Like that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, that's definitely one way of looking at it. And the original idea, or are we drifting into that Dead as the Moon?
Yeah, let's go into Dead as the Moon, which is like kind of the third act of the piece, before we get to Hibernator, which really, and I'll get to that, but I think that really ties the whole thing together and kind of throws the listener for a curve, but we'll get there. Describe for me kind of the symbolism between that puppet marionette visual that you see in Dead as the Moon, because it's really, to me, an extension of the Breach, but I can see that it's nearing the end for our protagonist.
It sort of takes off where the Act 2, Chapter 2 ends, and it's like a dream state where the original idea for that one was that the protagonist was supposed to dream about someone in white dancing in this concrete room, which eventually became the puppet that we see. So that, and I had this original idea of her seeing herself in a window as well. But of course, the puppet is a powerful and sort of, well, if you will, obvious symbol of what you've just described, that you're sort of powerless. But at the same time, you sort of, I don't know if you could say that you're willingly entering that sort of state where you're controlled by external factors. But it's the core of that it's about confronting yourself, obviously, because she sees herself in this state. So it's two realities or two versions of herself in sort of a dream state.
Yeah,
it's quite Matrix-like, if you will.
It was, but it's just the realization of what her life has become, right? Just because she's finally seeing the effects of everything around her on herself, and she realizes that she's kind of trapped in a way, or at least that's how definitely. I took it.
Oh yeah, definitely trapped in this room, the inner room that she sort of tends to revisit in different contexts. Yeah.
Right. And then we'll just shift to the fourth and final piece before I have some other questions that I want to get to. But with Hibernator, to me, it was really a nice juxtaposition with the rest of it, because now you have this white background, which is where it starts. The font is the same, but it's just the color scheme is flipped on its head, and you can see that now it's transitioning, right? And you see this white rabbit. And what was the idea behind this white rabbit? It reminded me of like Alice in Wonderland or something like that. I have to ask you what the white rabbit was.
Yeah, the white rabbit is sort of to honor Alice in Wonderland. No, it's the rabbit is of course a symbol borrowed from Carol's work, Alice in Wonderland, who is in a hurry all the time.
Yep.
And so the time is a factor in this storyline as well. What we make of time, and time is of the essence. Time is the most precious thing that we do have. If you sort of peel off these shallow and external bits, doesn't matter how many Rolexes you own or I don't know, cars or houses, you still have a finite amount of time to live your life. And also the Alice in Wonderland bit is, of course, the Wonderland itself. Of course, the rabbit stands as a symbol for that too. The Wonderland that we sort of find ourselves in, basically, well, many of us at least, all the time through screens and so on, and sort of living a life of, I don't know, make-believe or something. So I thought the rabbit was a good thing to put in there. It's a bit of fun, of course, as well. And it relates to the Matrix as well, because the white rabbit is in the Matrix, definitely. But of course, the original thing is Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland.
I'm glad that I was right on that, because I would have felt pretty silly if I was completely off base. But I did pick up on that. Hibernator is an interesting song for me because it's one of the most uplifting or I don't want to say happy, but when you combine the song with the movie, it's one of the happier Wolverine songs, which for a band, and I think you'd agree, it doesn't, the band, it makes you think, it makes you question, it makes you really listen with a critical ear, and in this case a critical eye. But it's not the kind of band where you're finished and you're smiling, right? At least for me, typically I smile because I enjoy the music, but it's not always the most uplifting of themes. But here you have this girl who the mask finally comes off, and then all of a sudden, out of the corner of her mouth, a slight smile and a touch of color for the first time and the only time in the entire piece. And I thought it was just like a really powerful way to put a bow on this 28-minute journey that you go on.
Thanks. Yeah. No, of course it's a matter of well, we could say that lyrically and visually, of course, Hibernator is about breaking the hibernation, sort of, and sort of untethering from whatever binds you, I would say. And of course, the very last scene with the mirror and the color, of course, it's a symbolic of change, obviously, and
absolutely
sort of progression, perhaps, if you will. Definitely.
But I have a question for you here.
Sure.
Because, do you see the song differently when just listening to it compared to when you see it with the film?
Absolutely, and because I think that was what part of the magic for me was when I got to watch it and listen to it, when as it was originally intended when it was first released. I think that if I listened to the song without the video accompanying it, I'm not sure that I would have even picked up as a listener about the ending scene, which to me is the climax of the entire thing.
Yeah.
So. And again, but I think the reason I say it's one of the happier or more thought-provoking songs is just because of the video that accompanies it. So to that end, you did a phenomenal job of conveying that. The song itself has a little bit of a happier melody to it than some of the darker songs.
Yeah, it carries some sort of hope
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, especially now, it put a real smile on my face because I think it's been a long year for everybody for a million different reasons. But I thought it was just a nice way to end it, and I think that when you for people that haven't had a chance to hear it, go out and listen to this, obviously, and buy the piece, but do yourself a favor and also watch it, because it's both elements together which really make the music pop in a way that it might not have but for the video accompanying it, if that makes sense. One of the things I'm dying to ask you, Marcus, my understanding is that you did the mix on the album, right? Like, how did you learn to do such a proper mix? Did you have training in this, or has that kind of changed for you over time? And the reason I say that is I just thought that sonically it sounded so good. And I don't have the greatest headphones, but when I'm listening to it with headphones, I noticed so much stuff in the background and kind of just stuff going over my head while I'm listening to it. I thought it was just a phenomenal mix.
Thank you. I'm not trained at all. I actually saw this EP as a test for myself to try to do something from scratch. We have recorded stuff in the past. Communication Lost. We did all the recordings by ourselves, and Machina Viva as well. We did all the recordings, but someone else has always mixed the albums. This time around, and again, because of the EP format, it allows you to test stuff, to try stuff out, and another factor in it, we are not a rich band, so. And I thought to myself, why couldn't I do this? How hard can it be?
That's what we are. The rest of the band asked that.
Having done it, is it something you see yourself doing going forward? Because it was just like I said. I listened to a lot of music, but this just resonated with me sonically. And I'm not even talking about the quality of the music or the quality of the video. The sound quality, I just thought was some of the best stuff I've heard in a long time. Just the way that it sounds, it just sounded so clean and so crisp, and I just thought it was well done. I thought you should know that.
Thank you again. Well, this is the second proper album I have mixed in my life. The first one was an electronic pop album by a friend of mine called Moist. His latest album I mixed, and that was like 8, 9, 10 songs. I don't remember. So that was the first thing, but that was a totally different kind of music. But I saw that as some kind of learning process as well, and I have some producer friends that I have been harassing with questions and so forth. So that's a part of it as well. So
can I add something as well?
Yeah,
sure.
Are you done?
No, I'm done.
No, and also part of the way we work in the band is of course that we are very critical, and there's a lot of arguing going on, and of course Marcus had to take a lot of opinions and so on from the rest of us regarding the whole thing that he did, that big chunk of the production. So well, obviously Marcus took lead on it and did his thing and sort of worked his way through it. But I can imagine, I don't know, Marcus, but that it's also a bit of a nuisance, and like it's annoying to have us on your back demanding things. And
I guess they say too many cooks in the kitchen spoils the broth is the expression.
Yeah. But that's how things tend to work. And when it comes to sensitive things, the songwriting is one thing, but then to actually do a mix that is supposed to be released, it becomes sort of the stove that you there, you touch the plates and you sort of get into dangerous territory when we start to argue about it.
Yeah, and there's so many different kind of mixes you can do for a song, and it's very subjective. You can have you can like the over the top productions, or you can like the minimalist, stripped down stuff more. It's all a matter of taste.
There's no right or wrong answer. It's just I guess how you feel, obviously, when you're mixing it, and what you think will resonate with the listener. But I mean, it's an imperfect science, right? It's not like there's one answer to these questions, and that's why you've heard albums throughout the years with different mixes, and it almost makes the album sound completely different just because of the way that things are equalized in certain ways.
Yeah, and some mixes that even can be considered bad maybe have some kind of character to it.
That's right.
That if you take that away, it's not even the same album anymore.
Right. No, I agree. Going back to the video for a second, Thomas, is this your first foray into a big video project like that? We'll get to some of the other work that you're doing, towards the end. But when did this real passion for videography or photography come out? Was it an extension of the music, or was it something else altogether?
No, I don't know. I think it's a matter of, I suppose, creativity and working with aesthetic stuff. And I happen to be interested in, I don't know, design, layout, the visual work, although I'm not trained to do it really. And photography has been an interest of mine for many years. I suppose that has given me, I'm not much of a photographer, but I think I have an eye for details and settings and composition, I would say. And I've done some just minor stuff video wise, and I've really enjoyed that. But apart from that, this A Darkened Sun is my sort of the door opener into
the gateway, if you will.
Yeah, sort of the gateway to work with video in this respect. I had no previous, serious knowledge on how to even go about. I didn't own a camera when I began this, a digital film camera. I didn't own anything. I didn't even have the software to sort of properly do post-production and so on. So I just took it basically from scratch, apart from the the stuff that I had in me, basically, and I've done some just simple work in iMovie and so on. So this was the beginning, actually.
It's a heck of a introduction, if you will, because it looks like a much bigger budget operation than it was, which I guess is kind of, you mentioned, Marcus, about like the budget of the band. Yeah. You wouldn't know it when you watch it, which I thought was very, very interesting, because it looks like it's a big production, but it was really done on a minimalist budget, if you will. So that's very interesting. Did COVID or the lockdowns and all the stuff that's been going on for the last year alter the project in any way, or was it really just still the way you envisioned it being released free for everybody last fall?
I think of course COVID, the pandemic, of course, meant that I can only speak for myself with the video bit to alter some of the plans for the film. For example, the breach, all the meetings taking place in that film were supposed to be the protagonist meeting the band members, one-on-one basically, and getting clues or whatever, symbolic clues and stuff. So that didn't happen. But Per, our keyboard player, he lives in Stockholm, so we managed to at least meet and do something, and then I sort of pieced some scenes together because I thought we should be in the film, all of us.
Yeah.
Not playing music, but to sort of be represented as band members in a suitable way, and what you see with Stefan on the screen and Marcus on a screen or two, and Jonas in the television, are just ways that I came up with to solve that issue, basically.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm happy again that this is. I know that there had been some demand for a digital release, which obviously again has just come out this past Friday, and I understand that it's actually going to come out on vinyl sometime in the fall. So that'll be exciting as well, and I'm sure something that many people will want to get their hands on. Can you? I guess just generally speaking, with the way that the music industry is, do you find it hard to reach like a bigger audience with something like this? Because with a project that's such a big project, I think the hardest thing for for us as podcasters, for you as musicians, just getting that audience to exposure to something, and then knowing that the project itself will carry the audience.
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Well, I have a few thoughts on the difficulties in, even though, as Marcus said at the beginning of this episode, we talk about trying to sort of break through the noise and doing something special, something different. Was of course something that at least made me and Marcus enthusiastic about working with this. But at the same time, after the release of the film, immediately we had this demand on digital audio release, and instead of I don't know, I think it was difficult to face that the whole thing that we wanted to sort of give to our fans and other people wasn't perhaps received the way that at least I had expected. When you have like a multi-dimensional thing like this, that we sort of put our soul into creating. It was. I didn't expect that the minute it was released, there was this talk about whether you should release it on audio or Spotify and so on, instead of okay, well, it's free now and it's something. But at the same time, I understand it's very demanding. Like you say, you have to pause and sort of think about what you're seeing and interpret it. It demands more of the listener and viewer to sort of take in this whole the full concept, the audiovisual
concept. It is, but that's why the length is perfect in my opinion, because it's not too long that it's too much to digest, but at the same time, now that I go back and I listen to just the audio, I find myself thinking about the movie piece and how it corresponds to the audio, because I've watched it a number of times, so it's kind of ingrained in me, and I know this. I know what images accompany the songs, and that's why the songs have the effect that they do, because of the movie that accompanied with it in the first place, or for the first countless times that I listened to it.
But don't you think that having seen the visual bits of it, that it sort of ruins something for you as a listener if you would have just listened to the album or EP before you got to see the audiovisual thing? In one respect, the audiovisual production has stolen your imagination, if you will,
in a sense, but to me, because again, I've listened to thousands of albums, right? So I have that experience every time I put on an album for the first time. Here it was the exact opposite, where I was basically watching, I felt like I was watching a movie, but with a soundtrack that might not have been created by John Williams, but was created by by this band that I've been listening to for the better part of 20 years now. So for me, it was just a different experience, but something that I actually appreciated, because it broke up the norm, which was namely, so-and-so band is releasing a new album. Let me put it on and listen to it for the next 60 minutes.
And that was also a question we asked ourselves. Why is it that we have to release something just audio? Why isn't it
or on CD or
Yeah, why isn't it that an album could be a video only?
Right.
Why not? That was one of the things we were thinking about, and I don't think people really understood it that way.
Right.
Said with a humble attitude, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a very, very interesting question, and I hope that it's one that other artists kind of adopt and at least think about incorporating into their, their future releases. And before I want to get to Wolverine and kind of like a little bit of what the future may possibly hold for the band, but I just want to actually go back in time for 1 second. Back in 2013, you all had the opportunity to play the ProgPower USA Festival, which is something I've been going to for almost 20 years now, and a number of our listeners have been attending on a regular basis. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that experience, just generally, how you first had heard about the festival, and I know that you had played the European edition, I think at least a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken. I know at least once. How did that whole process come to be where you got to come over and play the States back in 2013?
I actually spoke to Stefan today about it and tried to remember. I think we got a call or someone wanted us to play there. And we did.
Yeah, I think that's simple as that, right? And it was interesting because you guys played your normal regular set, if you will, plugged in a live show, and then you also got to do more of a stripped down acoustic set, which, just speaking to a lot of colleagues and friends, that second set for some people actually was the best set of the weekend, just because it was so intimate and so emotional, I guess, in a number of ways. I was wondering how you kind of constructed the set lists and really just what went into that whole experience, because for some people, they had never heard of you guys, and for others, they were fans for over 10 years at that point. So it was an interesting mix of the crowd, but it seemed like it went over at both sets really exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think we constructed the set list the way we always construct the set list, and that is, you look at what do we want to play, what do we think people want to hear,
right,
and what can we do to make it a bit varied.
Yeah, it's about dynamics, right? You have to sort of where you have to find like a balance of I don't know, slower and we're not very fast, but slower, faster, or more intense songs, if you will, and the more laid back stuff, to trying to find some sort of dynamic
ebb and flow.
Yeah. I think that if you keep the same tempo, if you will, throughout, you're going to lose the audience, but it's the ebbs and flows which really make for a great set. So
yeah, I think the second set that we did, the acoustic set, I think it was great. I think it was like you say, it was very intimate in that respect, and the closeness with the audience made it really something special to me, at least. I think it was one of the greatest moments to me on stage. Or playing the fretless bass and all that. I think
right.
So that was good. Whereas on the big stage with the heavier set the other day, it was great fun to be there to play, but it wasn't the same sort of connection with the audience. And also our set list was cut. We had one more long tune that we were going to play, which was a real bummer, because the band before us, they sort of went on overtime, if you will, and we didn't know that our set was going to be cut until we were ready to play the last song, and then they said we had to get out of the stage.
That's That's a bummer. Nonetheless, it was one of the highlights of my time going to the festival, so I appreciate that. I know that you had toured a little bit around the last album from 2016, which I had mentioned earlier. Is there any, as things I guess slowly begin to open back up, is a Wolverine tour in the future something that you'd like to do around a Darkened Sun? Or, because the way I envision it, obviously, if you're doing a full set, you could do a 30-minute piece with the video in the background, and I could actually see it really be a phenomenal live experience.
Yeah,
Well, the tour bit, us as a band, we live in different places. We live different lives, so it's always quite difficult to get something like a tour together.
Sure.
So it's a matter of finance as well, to be able to get away.
Of course.
And family life, obviously.
Of course.
There's a lot of factors, and we certainly would want to do it, but it has to be the right circumstances and the right, everything has to be, fall into place. So in some way, I like this idea of doing a live streaming concert or something like that. For us, that is the way we are.
Yeah, it's with a lot of bands having to kind of adjust or think of new ways to reach an audience and kind of get their name out there. A lot of bands have been doing the streaming thing, right? Especially over the course of the last year, where they couldn't go out and play live shows. So that would definitely be an interesting. And
perhaps we would have done that during the pandemic, unless we lived in different cities. It's so we haven't been traveling really, and we haven't sort of we haven't met in quite a while, and we haven't played live since 2017 when we ended the little tour, the European tour. And Marcus has been talking about this live streaming thing that we could perhaps do. But to sort of get back to what you were saying, Justin, about doing a Darkened Sun as a whole with video, I think that would be great. It would be good. It would be nice if you could do it sort of. You could have like the scenes that aren't really in the film, or angles and so on. It would be a lot of work. It would entail a lot of work to sort of put it together, unless you wanted to just put the film on in the background. But if you want more, screens and so on to sort of tell the story. Well,
I guess it depends on how much. It's certainly a commitment, and one option is, and not that I'm telling you what to do, but one option is to obviously have the movie on in the background, and that's easier, I guess, at this point. But if you wanted to really enhance it with different scenes or cutting in different images that may not be in the video, so that fans would be able to see, this is different from what I originally saw, or maybe just another vision.
You want to give something special,
But it's nonetheless, it's something that you then have for in perpetuity, because I think that it to me, it's just such a strong musical release that it's something that would seamlessly fit inside a typical Wolverine set list. But that's just my uneducated opinion.
No, I know you're. I think you're more of an expert on Wolverine than we are.
Let me ask you that, guys, this question. Just what else have you been working on as we kind of wrap things up a little bit? What have you guys been working on, independent, obviously, of a Darkened Sun, over the course of the last year or so?
Yeah, Marcus, what have you been doing?
I've been doing some pop stuff, and been doing some electronic music stuff, and I think that's about it.
Okay.
Really, not much.
Some stuff with your the band that you tour with at times, right? You did a video.
Yeah, 1 week ago we did a video. I think it will be released next week or something. And I did some live streaming stuff with another band, like an AOR project.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's that called? Do you wanna reveal?
Yeah, can you give us names? This way we can.
Oh yeah. The artist that I recorded a video with last week is called Thomas Di Leva. It's a Swedish, quite famous artist. And then the AOR band is called Soul Oblivion. I think we are on Spotify and all the streaming services.
Great. We'll put a link to that inside the comments so that people can kind of gravitate towards that and check out your other musical endeavors outside the typical progressive metal or rock that we're accustomed to hearing. And Thomas, what have you been doing? I know you've got your hands in a number of different things that we've talked about.
Yeah, sure. Since I'm not much of a songwriter, I haven't been dealing with music very much. I'm just happy to have the Wolverine band members to play with. They allow me to be in the band. No, I've been sort of exploring more video work. I have this film that I sent you is Difference in Difference. It's about it's a 5-minute short film related to the COVID pandemic, and the purpose of that making that film is to sort of honor the mainly the nurses, but also the doctors, obviously, who have worked to save lives, and also while doing that perhaps ended up at the deep end and died while trying to protect society. So it's sort of a comment on solidarity in these pandemic times.
That's I had the pleasure of watching that film. It's an extremely powerful and moving piece, and I think that it's really speaks to your, again, that the whole video and element that you're putting into, again, the Wolverine project, and obviously Difference in Difference. The way that I guess you're able to kind of depict or just show and convey emotion without without beating someone over the head with it, if that makes sense. It's just that there's a loudness in the subtlety, if that makes sense. And I think that's what resonated with me.
Yeah, I think it's. I was sort of provoked into telling this little story. It's a narrated piece where about the observations of how we behave, really, and what kind of things we are ready to do in order to help society recover faster. It seems that there's been, during the past year, a lot of wonderful things have been done, and people have, contributed and sort of stood by each other's side to sort of support each other. But at the same time, we see a lot of egocentrism and, people who sort of want to carry on, go about their business as usual. Of course, I can mainly talk about the situation in Sweden, but of course, I watch the news and I read stuff, and I see what's happening in the rest of the world as well. Some people would say it's only fake news, and that's that there's the hospitals aren't really in a bad state and so on. But then again, I actually lived together with an anesthetics nurse who's been sort of been pulled into intensive care, especially last year, and unless she's been doing something else in the evenings and when she's going to work, then I don't understand
have a feeling
what's going
she's
on.
Seeing it firsthand as opposed to.
Of course, I've heard some horrible stories about what's going on and the suffering that's going on, not only for the patients but also our medical personnel who sort of they just continue to show up to work and fight this horrible situation. And I think it's what provoked me is that people who try and deny that there is that there is a problem, trying to make things better at the hospitals, and that people are facing real challenges. It's mainly a comment on that in that respect.
Any other projects in addition to Difference, or is there anything else to expect down the line?
I don't know. Well, before we move on to that, Marcus had a piece. Marcus helped me a bit with this project to record some background noise or music. What do you want to call it, Marcus?
Just symbols.
Yeah. So when I worked on the sound design for it,
and the sound there, much like I mentioned with the Darkened Sun, it's the way it accompanies the video, I think, is very special. So again, kudos to you on another job well done. For somebody that's just kind of dipping their toe in the pool, that you've got a real talent.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know. I have some ideas for future films, like be it weird introspective stuff, and it would be nice to do some very short, like post-apocalyptic style film with simple means and I don't know. But apart from that, I haven't sort of stepped into the next video project, and this is something that I just do for as to channel creativity. It's nothing that I make money on or it's all learning processes. It's just like a Darkened Sun was just an experiment, and I'm just continuing to experiment and learn how to make film.
It's the same with the music. It's only ourselves and our own experiment. We do what we want to hear, and then if someone wants to, if someone likes it, it's just a bonus to us.
It's been a bonus for me to be able to listen to it and to enjoy the music, and I think that it's let's just say from the fans' perspective, I hope that it's not another 5 years for the next release, but I certainly appreciate the time and effort that go into it, let alone the thought process and obviously the money. So much appreciated. I want to thank you both for spending the last hour or so with me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to getting some more ears onto this new EP, which is just a phenomenal piece. So thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon. And there you have it, A Darkened Sun, one of my favorite releases from last year. It wasn't on my top 50 just because it was an EP and kind of didn't fit the tone of the rest of the list, but it's something that I did mention very early on in the podcast, and I'm glad we had a chance to speak to them about it because I know it's something that they're very proud of. But with that brings us to next week, and I kind of hijacked this week with the Wolverine EP. I'm very curious to hear what you're going to choose for next week.
Well, I figured since we'll actually be together, it would be fun to talk about something that I know we both really like, and I was kind of looking through some of our back episodes and trying to think of a band that we haven't discussed yet, and one of the bands that kind of screamed out to me was Ed Guy. We have talked about Avantasia, but not Ed Guy, who really have been kind of on hiatus over the last few years because of the popularity of Avantasia really taking Tobias Sammet's focus away with touring and making new albums and stuff. But Ed Guy was one of those bands in the late 90s that were just one of those standout German power metal bands. So I kind of I had a hard time picking an album because there's so many good ones, but I ended up choosing the 1999 album Theater of Salvation. So
awesome! Looking forward to that. I was curious when you said Ed Guy. I thought we could go in a number of different directions. I know you're a big fan of Vainglory Opera. I thought that was a possibility. Theater of Salvation was really, I think, when we both started becoming rabid Ed Guy fans. And then part of me thought you might go into one of the newer albums just because they're so different from the older stuff. But good choice. I'm looking forward to this. It'll be nice to listen to this because it's been a while. Quite frankly, I guess with much like them, right? I've been listening to so much Avantasia over the years that I haven't gone back and listened to the classic Ed Guy material. So it'll definitely be nice.
Yeah, this was my first Ed Guy album, actually. I had it before Vainglory Opera, and I'll talk about that next week. But yeah, just I can't even remember the last time I would have sat down and listened to this album start to finish. So I thought it was a good choice, and I look forward to discussing it with you. And I did want to mention, even though I wasn't able to join you for the interview, I did get to listen to the new EP by Wolverine, which was released on Friday, this past Friday on iTunes, Spotify, all the normal places you'd find it. And as far as Wolverine goes, this was I think some of the best stuff they've done. It's very Wolverine, like, it's very kind of dark and but really emotional, and I thought the production was very well done. I had been listening to it on YouTube until it was actually released on Friday, and then I got to listen to the version off of iTunes, and I was really impressed with how sonically it sounded. It was it sounded
totally
really good.
I could not agree more. I think that's really important to point out. And, obviously I look forward to more stuff from them. Just to kind of set the table for the rest of the month, we'll do Theater of Salvation next week. Then I'll pick the last album for May. And then we have a couple of requests that we are, discussing for that first week in June. And keep those requests coming because we have a whole queue of these things and we really want to kind of get to them all over time. So send us the requests, either hit us up with a private message or just find us, and all the social media platforms will take any requests and give them real serious consideration for June and for follow-up months.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really enjoyed some of the episodes we've done that were requested. The Seven Spires episode ended up getting us to do an interview with two of the members of the band, and I really enjoyed talking about Megadeth. So it's fun kind of stepping out of our choices and letting somebody else kind of take the reins.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We actually have some requests that there's some albums that we've gotten requests for that I've actually never heard of. And I think that's going to be really interesting when we cover something that neither one of us have ever heard and we're kind of just listening to it with fresh ears. Some of these albums are 20 or 30 years old and yet we've never heard them. So it'll be really interesting to kind of go back and get a fresh sense for people that, have dipped their toe in some of these pools, but have never actually gone full throttle.
Yeah. I think it would be fun to actually not have any discussion with each other until the episode and just kind of talk about it for the first time, while recording and having a genuine reaction without knowing what each other's going to say. I think that could be pretty fun.
I'm with you. And then I guess on that note, no better time to end than right there. Next week, Ed Guy, Theater of Salvation. We hope you enjoyed this week's show, and we'll be back. We'll be back soon. And like I said, next time we record, we'll be in the same room, which will be definitely nice and definitely different.
Yes, and I apologize in advance for the Street Fighter noises in the background.
Yeah, I can almost hear the third person in the room, the third member of the NWO in the back. I can almost hear him. So till next week, when we bring you some Ed Guy, it's Justin and Chris signing off. Take it easy, bud.
Take care.